Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. So today has been a wild day on the XRP chart. As you can see, this red candle right here, let me zoom in, it just plunged the price. It almost went down to the bottom right around here. So the question I'd like to answer in this video is this normal? What is going on here? Well, I don't know the future, but I do know the past. So I want to delve into this time right here, historically go through XRP history and examine how low this move down has traditionally been. So for those of you who are new or not so familiar with my videos, it is my belief that in a correction, that is a bear market, XRP produces the same structure every single bear market. So now it looks different every single time, the correction, but structurally it is the same. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So here is a breakdown of this decline right here. So there's the initial peak over here, and then there's a series of peaks that are structured essentially, and I label them from A to F. Sometimes A is not there, depending on the structure. All these peaks, they have repetitive characteristics in them. So C, for instance, it has these two parts to it. That is a very typical characteristic of this C fractal. D, the way it pulls up right here, it's hard to see. Let me zoom in a little more. Drops, and it does this like bowl type thing before dropping again. That is a repetitive structure that takes place in the D fractal. E, the way it moves up and does this bowl thing, is also repetitive. And I've gone into this through my previous XRP videos. You can go back and watch them and learn more about this repetitive structure that takes place in an XRP decline. Now, this last one is the capitulation fractal, fractal F, and historically it has gone down further, although we do have a precedent from back in 2017 that it did not drop lower than here. And that is where we get this fractal from, the 2017, which is really just a evolution of the original fractal where it drops down further, or a deviation. So after this correction, XRP moves back up and it goes into a range-bound sideways time that eventually leads to the next bull run. So let's examine this range-bound sideways time and see if we can find something like this that has taken place historically and compare it to now. Okay, so here we are at the very, very beginning of the XRP chart. This was back in 13, and here is that fractal, the very first fractal. So this time that we are in, that is a range-bound sideways time, that's what the chart actually begins with. So it starts with that range-bound sideways time, and in this sideways time, I've broken it down into three different fractals, and within those fractals, for instance, fractal 1, I have part A and part B. Part 2 has A, B, and C, and part 3 has an A and a B. So we are currently in fractal 1, and notice how I divided it. So part A is the peak, and part B is, in this one, it moves up and then kind of winds its way down to a point before moving back up again in the next fractal. Well, these two parts are very common in this fractal. So in this fractal, you'll see how it moved down here. It wasn't a very deep move compared to how much it moved up, but it did move down. So we are potentially in part A right now. Part B has yet to materialize in today's chart. Let's move along and examine the next fractal 1 in this range-bound sideways time. Okay, so we don't have to travel too far. So here was that original one. It moved up into its bull run. It had its first decline after the bull run. And then here we are back in that range-bound sideways time again that takes place after a decline and before a bull run. So let's zoom in here and examine this fractal 1 that we see here. So again, part A is divided into two parts. Sorry, fractal 1 is divided into two parts. Part A has two parts to the peak, and I should have pointed that out on the first one as well. The same is true with that one. But again, it moves back down and then it winds its way down to a point. So it's this move down that we are actually concerned with. That's what we want to see. Now, here, it wasn't a very big drop compared to the move up. But let's move along and see what else Fractal 1 in XRP history has to show us. Okay, so here is the next one. Here is the decline. Here's the capitulation fractal. And here is the beginning of that sideways range-bound time. This is Fractal 1, and this took place in 2015. Let's take a look at the full fractal, the full sideways time right here. There's three fractals. At the end, it moves up into a bull run. So here we have the two parts, part A and part B. There's two major parts to this part A, and the B winds down to a point before it moves back up into fractal 2. However, look here. So here was the capitulation fractal. This time went lower than the initial capitulation point. So that is very interesting to note. So we have historical precedent where in fractal 1, it actually can go lower even than the capitulation fractal. Let's continue to move on and see what history has to show us. Okay, so here we are in 2017. So this capitulation fractal happened so fast, this whole decline actually did. You really need to go in a much smaller time frame to see the repetitive characteristics that these fractals have on a smaller scale. But this range-bound sideways time is big enough to where a day candle can show it. So once again, there's part A and part B. Part B winds down to a point before moving back up into fractal 2. And as you can see here, it dropped almost to the same level that it had when it capitulated in the fractal F. So this, folks, is where we get today's capitulation fractal from this time. So let's take stock of how low it went right here and realize that what we are experiencing actually may be kind of normal. So that is where it went to. Let's see if we can get a closer look at that. So it essentially went down to the capitulation point of fractal F. So let's delete this and move along and see what else history has to show us. Okay, folks, so here we are. This is the all-time high. It's very hard to see with everything I have on this chart here. And this was the decline that took place in 2018. Here is the entrance into that range-bound sideways time. This is fractal 1. Let's zoom in here and see if we can get a clearer look at what's going on here. Okay, so as we can see, here is fractal 1. It moves up with A, and then it drops, and then B kind of, and this time it went kind of more sideways down to a point before moving back up into the next fractal, fractal 2. So as you can see, part A here dropped to almost the same level as the capitulation point. It didn't quite go as low, but it did go quite low. So let's move on to the next one, and the next one is where we are today. Okay, so here we are today. Here is the capitulation fractal. So we've moved up and we've completed, or we are completing, part A of fractal 1. So with this move down, it's almost moved down. Let's put a line on there and see what that looks like. Roughly quite the capitulation point, but near there. In fact, it could probably move down a little more. That's not to say it is. Now, let me show you something that I think is, believe it or not, kind of interesting or cool in what is taking place here. So assuming that this is where it bottoms out, and if we go back to the previous fractal, in fact, instead of going back there, I'll just copy and paste it onto here. And it is possible that we are following that 2018 version of this or some variation of it. Here, let me put that fractal on here. So folks, the decline was in 2018, but this range-bound time actually took place in 2019. So let's zoom in a little closer. So the timing is a little different here. Here you have this first peak. Here you have the second peak. It goes flat, goes up. And then instead of doing all this, getting down to a point, it just dropped. Now, if this is a rough idea of what we are going to be doing, and it could be doing something different. We'll have to see how this thing develops. But this, I think, is at least a potential rough guide for what we could be experiencing. So let's say that this is something that we might be doing. We potentially have just saved ourselves a ton of time. Let's go back and measure from this peak down to this trough back in 2019 and see how many days that took. Okay, so from this peak right here down to the trough, it was 42 days. So now this is speculation. This is assuming that this is the pattern we're following. I think there's a good chance it's something similar to this. It could also be something a little different. There's several different kind of basic fractals or patterns that this pattern one takes, this fractal one. But if we are going to be doing something similar to this, this saved us quite a bit of time, 42 days roughly. So let's go back to where we are today. So if this is a potential guide for what we are going to be experiencing, we may see something, if this is the bottom, we may see it pull back up, which it already has, and then just kind of maybe do something similar to this right here. Time will tell, and every time a fractal plays out, it plays out unique, even if the structure is the same. So if it did do something like this, it wouldn't look exactly like this, but it could be something similar. Anyways, I hope you found this video interesting. If you did find it interesting, you should hit that subscribe button and that bell button, and that way you'll be notified whenever I put out a new video, which I do on a regular basis, and I love covering XRP. You can also hit that thumbs up button. It means a lot to me. And one important thing, I am not a financial advisor, so none of this information should be construed or used as investment or financial advice. That would be a mistake. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day. Bye for now.